the dark mirror of familiarity. Few warnings in life come cloaked in the language of philosophy, but perhaps none are more prescient than those buried in the works of Arthur Schopenhauer. A thinker of sharp pessimism and stark realism, Schopenhauer offers a jarring truth that modern life rarely acknowledges. Your family and friends, those who should love you most, can be the greatest sources of suffering, envy, and limitation. In a world obsessed with connection and community, Schopenhauer flips the narrative, arguing that solitude, not relationships, brings clarity and peace. His insights suggest that human nature, driven by ego and self-interest, infects even our closest ties. This video explores how Schopenhauer's worldview unveils harsh truths about personal relationships, particularly the dynamics within families and friendships. Drawing from his works such as The World as Will and Representation, his essays on human nature, and his pessimistic anthropology, we unpack how the people closest to us may stifle individuality, foster resentment, and act out of hidden motives. Ultimately, this examination aims to reveal the unspoken emotional and psychological costs of closeness, as seen through Schopenhauer's radical lens. The nature of human will, the root of discord. At the heart of Schopenhauer's philosophy lies the concept of the will, a blind, irrational force that governs all living beings. Unlike reason or virtue, this will is not noble. It is insatiable, competitive, and often destructive. For Schopenhauer, every human being is driven by this primal energy, which manifests as egoism, desire, and envy. This premise forms the basis of his critique of human relationships. Even within families or friendships, where altruism should reign, the will rears its ugly head. The individual's pursuit of self-interest is subtle but ever-present. A sibling may resent another's success. A parent may unconsciously burden a child with unfulfilled ambitions. A friend may sabotage opportunities out of jealousy. What appears as closeness is often, to Schopenhauer, a battlefield of veiled motives. He warns us, the more familiar we are with others, the more likely we are to fall prey to the latent cruelty in human nature. Envy and comparison, poison in proximity. One of Schopenhauer's most profound observations is that envy grows in proportion to familiarity. Strangers may admire our achievements, but those closest to us often view them through a lens of competition. We rarely envy those who are far above or below us, he notes, but those near our own level. Family and friends, being in close emotional and social proximity, are thus most susceptible to the corrosive force of envy. This dynamic is especially pronounced within families. A sibling's promotion, academic success, or romantic happiness can ignite feelings of inadequacy in another. Friends, too, may find themselves trapped in cycles of comparison, measuring their own lives against those of their peers. While society romanticizes these bonds, Schopenhauer's realism urges us to see how comparison quietly corrodes affection. These sentiments often go unspoken but shape behavior. Subtle put-downs, passive-aggressive remarks, or distant resentment. Schopenhauer believed that many relationships survive not because of genuine warmth, but because of social expectations and unspoken contracts of mutual benefit. The myth of unconditional love. Modern culture clings tightly to the concept of unconditional love, especially in familial contexts. Schopenhauer, however, shatters this illusion. He asserts that most love, even that between parents and children, is conditional and transactional. Though parents may sacrifice for their children, they often project onto them a sense of ownership or expectation. A child's divergence from the family's values or aspirations can lead to emotional estrangement, guilt, or subtle psychological punishment. Friends, meanwhile, may support each other only as long as the relationship remains balanced and mutually reinforcing. Once one person outgrows the other, or diverges in values, the bond often deteriorates. Schopenhauer warns that what masquerades as love is frequently a contract built on utility, shared interests, or psychological dependence, not pure, disinterested affection. His position is not that people are inherently evil, but that their primary allegiance is always to their own will. This means that even the most loving relationships can, under stress, become battlegrounds of unmet needs, ego clashes, and masked hostility. Loneliness versus solitude, the case for withdrawal. To Schopenhauer, the pain that arises from relationships is not incidental, it is inevitable. The solution, solitude. In his essays, he champions the individual who retreats from the social sphere, not in bitterness but in pursuit of inner peace and philosophical insight. A man can be himself only so long as he is alone, he writes. If he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom. Unlike loneliness, which is the absence of connection, solitude is a deliberate withdrawal, a choice to escape the noise of social expectation and emotional entanglement. Schopenhauer believed that solitude allows for the cultivation of intellectual life, artistic insight, and self-knowledge, all of which are often compromised in social environments. He doesn't deny the human need for connection, but he sees it as a dangerous indulgence. True happiness, he argues, is found not in others, but in the silence of the mind and the stillness of solitude. The role of suffering in relationships. One of Schopenhauer's most controversial ideas is that suffering is intrinsic to human existence, and relationships are a primary cause. In families and friendships, the friction of ego, unmet expectations, and inevitable loss or betrayal leads to suffering that is both unavoidable and often repressed. He believed that the more emotionally entangled we are with others, the more vulnerable we become to disappointment, manipulation, and pain. The ultimate irony, then, is that the people meant to shield us from suffering are often its source. The warmth of closeness brings the cold risk of betrayal. The comfort of shared history binds us with invisible chains. Schopenhauer does not encourage nihilism but acceptance, a sober recognition that to be human is to suffer, and that much of this suffering originates not from enemies but from those we love. This insight compels a re-evaluation of intimacy, not to reject love or connection outright, but to approach them with eyes open, aware of their double-edged nature. A modern reading of an ancient warning. Schopenhauer's warnings may seem bleak, even misanthropic, but they offer a much-needed counterpoint to the romanticism of modern relationships. In a society that glorifies emotional closeness and community, he reminds us that the will, the core of human nature, is self-serving and prone to conflict. Even the closest bonds are fraught with ego, envy, and manipulation. Yet, this is not a call for despair, but for awareness. Understanding the hidden dynamics in our relationships allows us to navigate them with greater clarity. It empowers us to set boundaries, to cultivate solitude, and to resist the illusions of unconditional love or eternal harmony. Schopenhauer's pessimism, properly understood, is a form of liberation. It frees us from naive expectations and anchors us in truth. In the end, nobody warns you that family and friends can hurt you most, not out of malice, but because they are human. Schopenhauer did, and for that, his philosophy remains both unsettling and essential.